Welcome to our meeting of the New York State Dormitory Authority's Audit Committee. We're making full use of the technology today. I am in Buffalo, and we have the Albany and New York conference rooms conferenced in. Let's get started. Could I ask, does anyone have any comments on the minutes from our last meeting? And if not, could I have a motion to approve those minutes? Paul?
So moved.
Thank you. Beryl? Thank you for the second. All in favor of approval of the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have KPMG and Watson Rice with us today to talk about the 2018-2019 audit plan. Can I introduce Marie Zimmerman, Jeff Koch, Benny Hadnot, and Layla Aki. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, Aki.
Thank you, Aki. Are they ready to speak?
Yeah.
Yes, we're set up here, John. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John.
Okay, good.
All right, since we're desegregated, does everyone have our agenda for today that we're going to walk through? I know in Albany we do, and it looks like you guys have copies there in New York City. John, do you have a copy of our agenda today?
I do, yes.
All right.
And can everybody hear okay in New York City?
Yeah, but Kim, we don't have copies in New York City. Want to send it to me and I'll go make
That's
them?
fine. It's great.
You have it there? We can just run some copy.
I have this, but this is not the agenda.
Kim will send it and I'll make some copies.
Well, the agenda is the
It's the packet.
it's just a presentation. If you want to go make a copy.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Okay, I can look at it later.
thank you.
Okay. I started to bring a meeting. I started to bring another.
We'll work it out.
Okay.
Okay. So while the packet's going through, I'll be speaking to some of the items within the presentation, and if at any point, just stop me for those that don't have the presentation, if you have any questions as we're going through. First of all, I would like to thank management and the audit committee for renewing us for our 5th and final year of our contract. We appreciate being able to be here and be your auditors as we go through this final year of our contract. On slide 5 of our presentation is our engagement team, and I'm happy to say our engagement team is consistent with our previous 5 years. The one thing to know is we have added Caitlin Thomas as one of our associates. Although she's been on the DASNY audit in the past, as our promotions will be coming up, Dave Kolosky will be up for manager and Caitlin will be up for senior associate during the period under our audit. So again, even though the promotions will be occurring through our audit period, they will still be consistent individuals on the engagement team. In addition to our core engagement team, we have professional subject matters listed down below, and as you can see, we have up to 7 professional subject matters. Within our core engagement team, Benny and Layla and Watson Rice are also returning and consistent from the previous years. And Benny, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, team, and good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Just wondering, okay. I'd just like to address the bottom part of the slide, which is actually KPMG Watson Rice, a teacher, partnership. I mean, who would have thought that when we did this partnership arrangement 10 years ago, that it would have continued, throughout this through the process. But I guess the DASNY and KPMG, you guys had a vision that a process by hooking firms up together to work along as one team, side by side collaboration in all 4 phases of the audit, which include the planning, control, evaluation, substantive testing, and completion. You felt that that would work, okay, and you made a good choice. So that process had worked for the past 9 years, and we know we have all the confidence that it's going to work for the 10th year. And on. So, okay. So this year, for the 10th year, we will have 5 Watson Rise team members, again with all levels of experience, and we will contribute approximately 650 hours, which represents approximately 31% of the total engagement hours. We would contribute that, to the engagement. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, DASNY and the team and KPMG, and we look to move forward to this successful engagement for next year.
Right. Thank you, Benny.
Okay.
Thank you, Benny.
Yes.
So for our 2019 audit plan, I'm on slide 7 for those that are following along. As a part of our AICPA requirements, we are required to communicate the objective of our audit. And that objective is to express an opinion about whether the financial statements have been prepared by management with the oversight of the audit committee in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatements, from error, or from fraud. Our audit includes performing tests of the accounting records and in evaluating the appropriateness of the accounting policies used and the reasonableness of the significant accounting estimates made by management, and evaluating the overall combined presentation of the financial statements. As we have noted here on slides 8 and 9, we have noted management's responsibilities, the audit committee's responsibilities, and KPMG's responsibilities. Management and the audit committee are responsible for establishing and maintaining internal controls to prevent, deter, or detect fraud. And the audit of the financial statements does not relieve management or the audit committee of their responsibilities. KPMG and combined with Watson Rice are responsible for planning and performing our audit with an attitude of professional skepticism. As you'll see on slide 10 of the deliverables, we have 5 deliverables that we will be providing under this year's financial statement audit. On or about June 20th, 2019, we will be providing our opinion on the basic financial statements with the required supplementary information. We will also be providing our report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance and other matters based upon the audits of the financial statements performed in accordance with the government auditing standard, or commonly referred to as the Yellow Book report. We will also provide an audit report on the supplementary information, which is a report on compliance with requirements of Section 201.3 of the Title II of the Official Compilation of Codes Regulations in the state of New York. We and Watson Rice will concurrently perform these procedures as we perform our procedures over the basic financial statements. We will issue a letter to the audit committee communicating our required communications. And if necessary, we'll issue a management letter comments. We will also, subsequent to our issuance of our opinion in June, we will issue our opinion on the 30 individual financial statements for the bonds resolutions. With that, I'll turn it over. Yeah?
Marie, it's Al Carney. First of all, thank you. Under the letter to the audit committee, the AU-C 260, you've listed significant and unusual transactions.
Right.
Is that significant transactions and then unusual transactions, or must they be significant and unusual?
They must be significant and unusual. So in the past, you haven't had significant and unusual transactions that meet both those definitions. Yeah. So we'll just communicate that there were none. And if they would come up, we'll work with management to work through those.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine, but it is a good specific item. It has to be both for us to have the requirement to communicate to yourselves.
Okay.
So moving on, I'm going to cover on pages 11 and 12 the key areas of audit focus, and for the most part, these have been relatively consistent with prior years, given not a lot has changed at DASNY. There are a couple new items we'll go through as well. Starting at the top of the page with the cash and investments, as required by the terms of the contract, we will confirm 100% of cash, investments, and debt with the trustees and custodians. That is the specific required procedure that is part of the terms of the contract. We also do perform independent price test work on nearly 100% of DASNY's investments. Our firm policies are to take all the securities that are priceable and perform some data and analytics over those to kind of value those and ensure that they are appropriately priced as of the fiscal period year end. We do review GASB 72 and ensure that the disclosures presented in your financial statements are in accordance with the standard. And as Marie mentioned, we are also under the obligation to perform procedures over the investments for compliance with the requirements of Section 201.3 of Title II of the official compilation of codes, rules, and regulations of the state of New York. With regards to the balance for leases and loans receivable, we perform a roll forward and test the various components of that, which may include debt repayments, construction fund disbursements, construction fund income, and we also review that balance to ensure that there are no significant changes where there could be a risk of collectability related to that balance for DASNY. As mentioned, with the bonds and notes outstanding, we will confirm 100% of those balances. We will agree the debt balances that are confirmed to the individuals that we do perform throughout part of the audit that ultimately get issued in September. We'll perform substantive procedures over interest on bonds and financing income, as well as the corresponding balance sheet accounts related to that, the accrued financing income and the accrued interest payable. We will perform substantive procedure over these bonds and notes to ensure compliance with GASB 7 and 23. And as I had mentioned before, one of the newly adopted accounting pronouncements, GASB 86, related to certain debt extinguishment issues, we will work with management and review the updated disclosures as a result of that to ensure there are no issues or obligations that would need to come back onto the face of DASNY's statement because of the requirements of that. For accounts payable and accrued expenses, as with all engagements we perform, we will perform a search for unrecorded liabilities subsequent to DASNY's year end to ensure that all balances are properly stated and recorded in the period in which they were incurred. We will also perform test of detail and analytical procedures over DASNY's compensation, construction accruals, and other liabilities that are significant to its financial statements at year end. For payroll and human resources, we will review payroll and human resources performing substantive analytical procedures. One of the other items that we will be performing as part of payroll as well as with the OPEB obligations, which is on page 12. During the current fiscal year, GASB 75 is required to be utilized by DASNY. We will work with management again and the disclosures related to that to ensure that the liability is properly recorded on the books. This changes slightly from how the liability is currently recorded, as it's now being recorded as the expenditures are incurred, what's the unfunded position. This will present more the liability of the potential liability down the road for those individuals in DASNY's OPEB plan that will require payment down the line. We'll also review the GASB 68 disclosures based upon DASNY's participation in the New York State and local employees retirement system. And we will also confirm 100% of the interest rate swaps. We do use a tax specialist to review DASNY as an organization as required by our firm policy to ensure that DASNY still meets the tax exempt status as a governmental entity. And then also, because of the importance of the IT systems here at DASNY, we do perform certain test work over the IT general controls as well as IT application controls of the DASNY environment. We'll talk about some of those procedures in a minute. The next page, on page 13, is more for informational purpose. This is our audit methodology approach, where basically it's a continuous process that we work through with management in the middle, kind of having that communication role as we kind of complete the various phases from financial reporting, critical accounting estimates, standard procedures, and internal controls.
And throughout the audit, as management and your actuaries are identifying the new OPEB liability, we'll work with management early on to have our actuary review those and determine anything before, so there's no surprises at the end. We will be utilizing the same actuary for DASNY as we will be utilizing for the state of New York and SUNY and other component units of the state. So that actuary will be familiar with the key assumptions that are put into the OPEB liability. In addition, one thing we would like to note, we'll continue to work with Kim and utilize internal audit as we're going through our procedures.
And page 14 just provides the audit timeline, which has not changed significant from prior years. We do start our typical general risk assessment and planning process in the January-February time. We have historically been on site later in April after year end to be part of the confirmation process, and then return in May through June to wrap up the audit and do all of the standard procedures as part of our year end process. Throughout this time frame, we do periodically meet with management throughout the course of the audit to address any issues that emerge, and we'll be meeting during this time frame as well to discuss any progress on the new GASB pronouncements or any questions that may arise. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Layla to go through our information risk management section.
Thank you, Jeff. Now on page 15, it goes over the work to be undertaken by the information risk management team. Basically, this is the IT audit team, which will be led by Kushal Drew, who is the IRM director at the Albany office. Now, the audit team is expected to review the JD Edwards system and the SandGuard application, and they will focus on evaluating the information systems, control environments, and related information systems administered by DASNY and its third-party service providers. The audit team will also utilize a 3-tier approach to test general IT controls over DASNY's IT systems, including information security controls, change management controls, program development controls, and computer operations controls. So that's the IT audit coverage. With that, I'm going to turn over to Marie and Jeff to go over the new and emerging accounting pronouncement.
Thank you. On slide 16 is our new and emerging accounting pronouncements. As Jeff has already talked about, the OPEB standard with GASB 75, as well as certain debt extinguishment issues with GASB 86, both of which will be implemented this year by management. In addition, not noted here, just because it addresses various of different topics, is GASB 85, which will also be implemented during this year end. GASB 85 has a numerous different topics into it, including some that will relate to the OPEB standard, and as you're implementing GASB 75, we'll be looking to those as well. Looking down the road is GASB 87 with leases that'll be effective for year ended March 31st, 2021. One of the key items to note here is with the exposure draft noted on page 17, the conduit debt obligations. Within that exposure draft, it does discuss leases and whether the conduit debt leases should be applied. So whether the GASB 87 would be applied to leases that are part of your conduit debt. Now, as noted on slide 17, for DASNY, the GASB exposure draft of the conduit debt obligation is obviously the biggest GASB pronouncement coming down the line for you. Management did share their respondents to this exposure draft, and we thought it was one of the best in class. We did look at it just for content and topic, and it was well written, and I think GASB will be excited to have that response. There was 39 respondents to this exposure draft, including the AICPA, the AGA, and then the state of Florida, Washington, D.C., and New York State Office of Comptrollers, as well as yourselves. In looking through those, in my opinion, there was nothing that was necessarily contradictory to your opinion, so I think GASB will be pleased to hear that your industry is consistent and that everyone was pleased with the definition of the characteristics. In addition, I know that some of your topics was defining what an issuer is. As you noted right here on slide 17, the definition of conduit debt would have to meet all the items, and the second one being the issuer. Not only did you respond with a question of that, but the AICPA did, the AGA did. So it is definitely a topic that I would assume that GASB will clarify, given that so many respondents did ask the question to have further clarity there. One thing that I think would be great to note is the AICPA also wrote in, currently as the exposure draft is written, annually, or as triggering events would occur, you would have to reevaluate the conduit debt meeting this definition. They have recommended that that wouldn't happen annually, that if once it meets the definition of it at one point in time, it would stay and remain there. I'm not sure how GASB will take that, but that would be good for management to not have to go through that level of effort on an ongoing basis. For the exposure draft, the timing of it is comment period, as you know, just ended on November 2nd. The GASB will deliberate on them throughout March 2019, and then they will review and consider for final ballot and approval in May of 2019. The current exposure draft says that you could early adopt, because currently adoption is not required until your 3/31/2022. However, that early adoption, I'm not sure would be in time for this year under audit, so it would be for as early as of your 2020 audit. That concludes our presentation for today. Does anyone have any questions? John?
Can I go back to page 10 of the booklet? There's a reference to auditors' reports on 30 individual financial statements for bond resolutions. What is that?
So annually, we also provide an opinion on your bonds resolution as required within your obligation, your bond issuance.
We have multiple bond resolutions that required annual audited financials. We no longer do that. We do have certain issuances that are still under old style resolutions, and that number has been dropping, and we will be down to 30 for this upcoming year. It used to be
100
over 100.
Wow.
200.
Yeah.
And my other question is, could you, when you perform your tests on the IT system or systems, do you actually get into those systems and do things and look at how they work? Are you looking at output and comparing them to, to control results? How do you do that? Are you breaking into systems or trying to break into systems?
No, we're
Penetration.
our procedures are designed to test the information system from a financial reporting standpoint to ensure that there is a general control environment that says the control is a stable environment, that the risk for someone potentially fraudulently representing something in the system is minimized, so that the IT applications that management relies on for some of their controls, reports, the SunGuard uploads and data feeds, et cetera, those types of things are reliable, that we test as part of our audit to utilize to assess a level of the risk on the audit and address our audit procedures with. But we don't go through the security breach test or cybersecurity type of test work related to that. We consider cybersecurity as part of it to make sure there are no risks from that standpoint, but we don't go through a full barrage of tests related to cybersecurity. It's specifically related to the reliance on financial reporting.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So primarily it's testing management's controls around the system, if you could think of it that way. It's the GITC, it's the management's controls that are built into your system that we're relying upon and management's relying upon to ensure that the data, the integrity of the data is secure. In this world, we have to rely upon GITC systems.
Yes. And the fact that the substantive auditing is at such a high level here, it's, I believe, able to reduce the amount of testing that you do on the systems, because they, independent of our systems, verify so much of what is on our financial statements.
Any other
Are there
questions?
any other questions?
John, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, if you would permit me. I just wanted
Absolutely.
to read the balance of the audit committee and other board members on the comment letter that
Yes.
we submitted. As Maria had pointed out, we did ask for a couple of clarifications to make sure that we were reading their intent properly. One area that would be new information to the board is while the exposure draft came out as we had anticipated, that our private clients would not be on our financials anymore. In terms of looking at it from DASNY's risk exposure, we have asked GASB to consider broadening the scope such that our publics would also not be on the statements. The concern being, if DASNY previously had privates and publics on the books, and now with the new pronouncement, privates are taken off, with the theory that there's no obligation on DASNY's part, there's a concern that a reader might think then, incorrectly, that DASNY must have some liability associated with the public debt, or why is it being treated different from the private debt? So we tried to lay that out to GASB and ask them to reconsider that so that the public debt would be considered conduit as well. And we're happy to supply the comment letter that we sent to GASB to any of the board members that are interested in reading that.
Kim, this is Al. I'd like to see that letter if I could.
Happy to.
It's a fun read. I enjoyed it.
It was a fun ride.
You know, one thing to also know, although even if the amounts come off the books, it's still a required disclosure. So management's still going to have a level of effort and still will have to have internal controls in place to retain that data and that information that will go in the disclosure.
Yes.
So that is also an area that was open for discussion in some of the comment letters was, although this is great because there would be consistency in the presentation, the level of effort that's required doesn't go really change. It doesn't go away.
And in addition, we have New York State requirements that provide an even higher level of detail than GASB would require in our footnotes, so that we still have to report to the state on an issue-by-issue basis, every series, original par, outstanding balances, who the borrower is. So none of the internal tracking and reporting is going to end as a result of this exposure draft.
Okay. Is there anything more we need to cover? I want to thank KPMG and Watson Rice for their presentation, as always.
Thank you.
And I will move to our next agenda item. Kathy Ebert has an update for us.
Thanks, John. We were notified that OSC wants to perform a follow-up review of the implementation and recommendations of the prevailing wage audit they performed in 2016. The audit was of the monitoring of prevailing wage compliance on construction contracts. So they will be on site here in Albany Thursday, tomorrow's not Thursday, in 2 days, and formally kick off this review. So to briefly recap, the results of the audit were good, and we had 2 minor recommendations. So I'm in the process of just gathering that documentation so that I can provide it to them on Thursday. Does anybody have any questions?
Is this a routine procedure that they're coming back, or is it spurred by something?
No, it's routine in that they follow up on audits that they have performed. So they typically come back a year after they've performed an audit to see what we've done with the implementing the recommendations.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session, but before I do that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go into executive session. When we come out of executive session, if there isn't any further business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. This executive session would be just the members of the committee and Kathy and Kim. So may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial history of a particular corporation and matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. And thank you again, our presenters, for your work this afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Recording again for a second?
We are back.
Okay, we are out of executive session. I can report that no decisions were made in executive session other than to come out of executive session. Is there any further business to come before the committee? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? Beryl, thank you. Paul, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.